So, I've been following you for a really long time, and I don't know exactly where it was, but somewhere along the way, and I remembered this the past few days as I was kind of doing some research, but I know you gave a speech or you had a comment or a post that talked about keto turning you into a superhuman.
So, yeah, that was my first KetoCon presentation.
The first KetoCon presentation ever. So knowing that, with that in mind, Mr. Danny Vega, welcome to the Superhuman Life.
Thank you, man. I'm happy to be here, man. I'm really happy to be here with you. Talk about whatever you want to talk about, man. It's just like two good friends just getting together to talk about stuff they love.
Just talk about
better than that.
Nothing in the world is better than that. And I know, we had the video on, you could see me. Well, last time we spoke on one of these podcasts, you were shirtless. So you motivated me today to pull the sleeves off. We're going to get into some muscle building talk. We met in the gym, we trained, quite a few times, and we've thrown some heavy stuff around. But yeah, today I want to kind of get into, at some point down the road, is we're going to talk about carnivore and muscle building. And is it possible? I've obviously have been carnivore for, 7+ months now. I got into it for very different reasons than I think you did. And we've been on different paths, but you're really pushing the threshold when it comes to training and performance. So I want to get into that at some point in this podcast, but to kind of kick things off, Danny, because you are a very well-known figure in the keto and carnivore community. You have an incredible following. You and your wife, Mara, have an incredible mission, what you guys are doing with all of your work. But I want to kind of set the tone of who is Danny from a training, from an athletic, from a performance side, and where I really want to start at. We touched on it a little bit before we hit record. You were a top elite athlete in Miami-Dade County very early on.
Yep.
You can share with us what that accolade was that you got, because it is something that I've listened to quite a few shows with you, and it gets touched on a little bit, but I don't think anybody's ever given it the real respect that it truly deserves. So, maybe take us back to kind of the beginning, early phases of Danny's athletic career, because you've accomplished so much in your life and in your career, and what you're doing now. There's a reason why I think people need to listen to you. And I think all of your accomplishments in your life really kind of lead us up to that. So before we kind of talk into some of the tactics, let's kind of bring people, because I know some will know who you are, and there's going to be an element of people so let's kind of give them a short story and just kind of, take us back to maybe those Miami-Dade days, Danny, the young beginning athlete.
Yeah, man. I'm happy to talk about this, man, because I'm proud about this stuff. So
should be.
When I was in high school, I started playing football when I was 10, and I was hooked instantly, man. I just was obsessed. My dad was trying to find things to put me in because I was, hyperactive. That was before the ADHD was even a thing, but I was always real talkative, real just tons of energy. And he tried a few different sports. He even put me in tennis. That was terrible. I was hitting the balls out of the whole place, like hitting home runs with the tennis balls. It was just a disaster. And then he took me one day. I was watching my friend play baseball at the park, and he picked me up at the park. And he's like, "Come on, we're going to go play football. I'm signing you up for football." And I was instantly in love, man. By the time I had hit 8th, 9th grade, I was like, I want to play college football. That was my number one goal. We had the media guides. Have you ever seen a media guide from a college team?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Thick things. I would look through those and I'd be like, okay, this guy's 5'11", 230. This guy, these are his stats. This is what his 40s are, And I that was my mission throughout high school, man. So I know, to me, it's an alien thing to hear about high school days being crazy days, party days. Because I didn't party. There was I didn't even drink. I didn't drink carbonated drinks. I ate really well. I did eat some crap. My dad would take me a lot to McDonald's and Burger King after practice, and he'd give me double quarter pounders and McFlurries and all that crap. But overall, I was really focused on this, man. It was what I wanted to do. And so by my junior year, I was already getting looks from bigger schools. There was, and then senior year, of course, it was UCF, Missouri, Naval Academy, Rice. Those were the biggest schools that were recruiting me. And then my high school quarterback sent his game film to Columbia, and Columbia they saw me on film, and I probably had 250 yards that game. And so my senior year, everybody knew who was getting the ball. It was going to be me, you know. That was a fact. And we only had 9 games because we lost a game because of a hurricane. So I was able to hit 1,816 yards in 9 games. And that led to me being the leading rusher in Dade County out of all schools. There was the second person was a guy from Northwestern, which is a powerhouse, and he had 1,300 yards. So, you know, granted, the level of play is not the same across because I was in a 2A school, he was in a 6A school, but I did play against big schools. Gulliver was a pretty big school. That year they had 2 defensive players that played college ball and were massive, you know. Yeah. And, you know, I had 253 yards against them, you know. Then there was this other school. There was a school called Bay Point that was like one of these correctional schools. So they showed up. First of all, it was their first season, and it was all people from all the good schools that had been kicked out, and they were just destroying everyone. No one had ever scored on them. 8th game of the year, people had still not scored on them. It was 66-0, 68-0, like ridiculous. Wow. And I could tell, I was a team captain. I could tell when I shook these guys' hands that these guys, they were feeling themselves. And like, I think it was the 4th play of the game, I scored a 40-yard touchdown on them, and they were like just blown away. Yeah. Like I completely deflated them. What's his name? Who has the sports show? The Cuban guy. And he has his
Dan Levitard.
Dan Levitard was a writer for the Miami Herald at the time, and he gave us, how sweet of him, he predicted that the game was going to be 66-8. So he gave us 8 points. 8 points. And so this was our homecoming game, and I score on them like in the first couple of minutes of the game. And long story short, man, like it was 14-9. We had scored my 1 touchdown. And then my friend, who's a linebacker, got our safety. So we got a safety. And it was 4th quarter. We were on the short side of the field. We did basically a simple double flare route, double flare route for the 2 running backs that were in the backfield. And my quarterback at the time was a sophomore because my real quarterback had broken his thumb. And before the play, he drew, the coach came up, timeout, drew it out. I was doing jumping jacks. Like where I was like wide open, man. Yeah. And he threw it to the short side of the field. The guy got tackled. And then the next play of the game, it was like 3rd down already, and we had to go long, and he threw an interception. And everybody, this is another example, like everybody, that was homecoming night. I spent like probably 20 minutes crying on the field, like at the end of the game. And then everybody was calling me to go to the parties at night. And I was like, screw you guys, I'm staying home. Like, I'm not going anywhere tonight. But, you know, I definitely did some big things in high school. And then, of course, I went on to play at Columbia. Then, you know, after college, in college, that's when I always loved strength and conditioning. But my strength and conditioning coach was just a badass, man. Like, he played at University of Virginia. He was a thrower. You know, he played at, you know, he threw at all the biggest events, and he was just shredded and just smart. And I loved his programming. And so that kind of got me really to think about, man, maybe I should be a strength and conditioning coach. And then he left after my sophomore year. He went on to University of North Carolina to be their basketball team's head strength coach. And then after a few years there, he went on to be the head strength and conditioning coach for the Timberwolves. And so I graduate from college. I call him up when I'm at University of Florida. I'm telling him, listen, I'm a grad assistant. I'm going to be a strength and conditioning coach just like you. And he was like, don't do it. I was like, what? I was like, I'm doing what you're doing, man. Like, you inspired me. I'm a strength. He's like, don't do it, man. He's like, it's too much, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't listen to him. He ended up getting out of it like probably 4 or 5. There were times when I would call him. He's like, I got to go. Kevin, what's his name? He was walking into my
Kevin
office.
Durant.
Yeah, no, not Kevin Durant. Tall guy.
Okay. Kevin Garnett. Yeah. Kevin
Garnett. Walking into my office. I would call him and just, I had a lot of other mentors. Jay Ferrugia was a big mentor of mine.
Yeah, I know you talked to me about him before. Yeah.
Yeah, man. You know who Jay is, right? Do you know?
I know who Jay is. I don't know Jay like personally, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Renegade Radio and like
Yeah,
with the
man.
online fitness stuff, like he was one of the original like online OGs, like when it comes to like
Yeah, man.
ClickBank affiliate offers, like he's still got muscle building programs that he probably wrote like 10, 15 years ago that are just being sold, like just, like
Yeah,
on
man.
autopilot. So, one thing I'm kind of curious of is, for me, high school was a whole different world. I mean, I was, I varsityed in multiple sports. I was, not an athlete of your degree, but I was definitely a strong, solid athlete. But with that, a lot of times, and I mean, at least where I grew up, it's like being an athlete and kind of the partying thing, it almost went like hand in hand. But you said
I know
it's
that
like,
that's in a lot of places for
yeah.
sure.
So did you have like models or mentors like in your life, or was that just like you knew like from early on like yourself? Or were there people that were kind of guiding you in not going down that route?
Well, first, let me say that my story is a little bit different. First of all, because I don't talk about this that much. I mean, I think I've talked about it a few times, but I was a very violent kid. My dad was addicted to coke when I was young, and I had a lot of anger issues. And actually, when I go home to Miami in a few weeks, my mom just texted me. She found the notes that she had written and some of the activities that I had done when I went through anger management, because I got kicked out of my middle school after 7th grade because I slammed the kid's head into a water fountain. And so I had to go through anger management classes and I had to go through all that. And the only reason I went to a private school was because if I stayed in the public school system, I was going to fail a year. I was going to have to go to what they called an opportunity school. So I was a smart kid. My dad, after I got kicked out, he put me in my room. He tore down all my hip hop posters. He said it was a rap. I had a crate full of tapes. He broke them, and he's like, "Stay in your room. You're not going anywhere." I'm like, "All right." So like he comes back like a few hours later, and he's like, he throws a few information booklets at me, and they're like 3 different Christian schools. And I just picked the one that looked like the most lax,
Yeah.
Like the uniforms aren't that bad, or the rules aren't that bad. And then, so I was saved when I got there. I was like 14, 15 years old. And so already I was in a Christian environment, not to say there was even a drug bust at my school once, so there was drugs and there was stuff, but it's way different than the typical bigger, public school.
Yeah.
But I was definitely much more focused, than typical people. I would say there definitely were some mentors, and funnily enough, I just spoke to one of them yesterday. My high school basketball coach. He was also my health coach. He is one of the most amazing people. Coach D, Octavio De La Grana. He took our basketball team to states, which has never been done before or since, to my knowledge. And then he went on, he did some coaching, some other places, and he's been working for the Heat organization, Miami Heat, for like the last, 10 years. And we were just talking yesterday. He was calling me, asking me about some nutrition stuff. But he was a huge mentor for me, man, because he just he and my dad both basically kind of taught me things like how to be a man. Like one of the things I remember from Coach D, man, is like one time there was this kid that was getting picked on, and he went and told on the people picking on him to Coach D, and Coach D basically reamed him, and he's like, "Don't you ever come telling me again."
Go take care of it yourself type of thing.
Go take care of it yourself.
Yeah.
And my dad, for me, my dad obviously is my biggest mentor, not only because of the fact that he showed me what it was like to be real and to take responsibility. Like when the whole thing went down with the cocaine addiction, I had to go to my dad's mom's house. So I woke up one morning, my dad would go on these business trips, right? A few days long. And the last time I think was the time when my dad fell asleep at the wheel and crashed into a ditch. Thank God nothing happened. No cops ever found out, nothing like that. But I woke up and, I was sleeping in my mom's bed, and my sister was with me, and my sister was much younger. I was 8 or 9. And she's like, we might have to move into an apartment. I might be divorcing your father, all this stuff. And So we went to my grandmother's little apartment right by Miami International Airport, tiny little apartment. And they left me and my sister in the room, and my grandfather, my grandmother, my mom, and my dad were in the apartment talking stuff over. And then a few hours passed, and my dad takes me into the parking lot, and just, he's scruffy. He hasn't shaved, and I don't know what's going on. And he's like, he's just apologizing, crying to me. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what was going on yet, but I did find out the next morning when we were back home. And I woke up, it was probably a Saturday or Sunday morning. I went to go watch cartoons, and my dad is sleeping on the couch because my mom put him on the couch. And he's like, "Papi, come here." And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "I'm addicted to cocaine." I was like, "What?"
And you're how old again?
I was like 9.
Wow.
And he tells me this, and I'm like thinking to myself, I swear I still remember this. I'm like, why didn't you just say no? Because everything was just say no, just say no. Like, you remember the 80s and the 90s? Like, just say no to drugs. Like, all you got to do is say no. Like, why did you not just say no? And so he taught me that. And then, like, that New Year's, we went to a New Year's Eve thing at my church. And again, like, he cried, and he was like, "I'm so sorry." And then he became the best dad ever. So he taught me that, which I think is super important, to be vulnerable and to own up to your stuff. And, we only had one car. We were bankrupt. We didn't have any money. My mom would take him to work. Then she'd pick him up, take him to outpatient, all that stuff. And, he handled his business, man. And so he taught me that. He taught me to be a hard worker. He was always, he also, those later years, he made it a point to always, like, point out when people were getting drunk, when people were, like, doing drugs and stuff. Like, "You see that guy? He's such an idiot. Look at him. Look at how he's acting right now." Or, "You see that guy? He doesn't work. He's what we call un cero a la izquierda," which means in Spanish, it means to the left of zero. So he's negative. Wow. Like, he's not a real man. A real man provides for his family. And my dad, to this day, man, he wakes up every single morning. Well, not anymore, because my mom just retired this year. But he woke up every single morning. He would spray down the car. He would turn it on. He would put the air on. He would always fill up her tank. When she got home from work, he was the one who had dinner ready for her. So he showed me how to be a servant leader, So, I mean, I think those were some really big influences for me back then.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I mean, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think there's, a few kind of takeaways just from that little short condensed story there. It's like, first thing, like, he had to do is he had to face, look himself in the mirror, realize that there was an issue. And then, like you said, become vulnerable or be open and actually identify it, and then talk about it. I mean, that's something that, I don't have kids. I know you and Mara are doing an incredible job. And, I don't want to take this conversation too far down that, but, like, you guys are, like, I've shared this with you on your show. Like, I'm such a fan and so supportive of your family and how you guys are raising. And I've gotten to know your kids, over the last few weeks. And that's just awesome. Me and Stephanie, we were having a conversation about the other night, but, I think that's something that a lot of parents would be scared of addressing that young of an age. That's why I asked, like, you said cartoons, and then he just bluntly says it. I mean, that's, but then it's not, he just say it one time. He then began to lead by the example. And like you said, I mean, that, shows, and tells me like why you are the man that you are today. So
thank you, man.
For sharing.
My dad, I think that's also where I get my whole, like, no holds barred, talk about anything.
Yeah.
Deal. Like, I'm not as, like, blunt as my dad.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit more politically correct because my dad he has no hair on his tongue. But, like, I think that was really big, man. I think that was a real big reason why, like, and he gave me confidence too. That's the other thing that we spoke about before. Both you and I have this impostor syndrome that it's always, like, in the background trying to bite us. Like, man, I don't know if I'm as good as these people say I am, or if I'm as smart or as valuable. But my dad was always like, "You're the best. You're awesome." Like, and then when I promised you, like, there's one thing to say, "Do you think I'm as good at that as that guy?" Or do you think that, like, I can make it there? And, someone says, "Yeah, you can make it there." No, my dad is like, "What are you talking about? Of course, you're better than all of them. Like, don't even question it." Like, man, that I never believed him. I was always like, he doesn't know, man. He's blind. He's blind, but he wasn't. Like, obviously he was blinded by love, but you know, he just based on what I've had accomplished, like maybe I should have listened to him.
Yeah. So let's get back to there, because I think, you know, we could stop at, you know, leading rusher in Miami-Dade County. And for a lot of people that would be, you know, from an athletic perspective, like that would be the cream of the crop. It's like, okay, good. Like I'll check that off. Like athletic accomplishments from my life. Like I'm good. Put that book away. But you know, like you touched about the strength and conditioning, and I know you had a few different stints at some universities, but post that, I mean, you've continued to push the threshold from a training perspective. I mean, powerlifting, CrossFit, you know, all these other elements now, you know, holding records in the state. I mean, you've done it all. And now you're walking around, you know, I heard somebody refer to you as the most jacked guy in keto.
Ben's always doing that. Yeah.
And I don't know if that there's an argument for that, because I mean, I'm not deep in the community like you are, but I mean, I don't know, you know, that many guys that are as jacked as you. So, yeah, I mean, let's kind of talk more about, you know, the training post the high school and post the career. Like, you know, what are some of the things you've done? And I mean, because you got your hands in so many things, and I think that's what makes you such an incredible force now with what you're doing, is because like, you're just not talking from books. You're just not talking from listening to other people. You've done all this, and now you actually can also speak from a very intelligent level. So in terms of your training and kind of some of your other accomplishments that you've had, like, let's just kind of take a little, you know, like speed us up a little bit to kind of get to the current day here.
Yeah. So after college, I remember when I was in grad school, I was still kind of training hard, like just lifting, but lifting more to look good than anything. And then when I moved to Miami, after I had left strength and conditioning as a profession, I moved into an apartment, and I started hanging out with my cousin a lot. And my cousin's like my little brother. He's my best man at my wedding. He's a model, you know, like he's a really good looking kid. You know, I don't want to say kid because he's like only 5 years younger than me now. So
I do that all the time too. It's like, if anybody's like younger than me, it's like, yeah, that kid over there, like
it's a good kid. And I still see him as my little cousin, you know, like he was my tail when I was like 4 or 5 years old, but he's a man in his own right, and he's done things in his own right. But I basically we would go on runs together, and I tried to make my body like his. And like, so I didn't lift for a whole summer, which I just did lots of running. And I think I got down to like 195, and like me at 195 is like emaciated. Like my head looked big, like weird, you know? And then what kind of reignited my passion for like lifting consistently, because I was doing, after that, it was kind of like, I would do like CrossFit-ish type workouts. I learned about CrossFit maybe 2008, 2009. I didn't do it, but I was like doing that type of stuff. And then in 2011, when Desmond was born, we were living in a place that wasn't too far from a CrossFit. And I think we got it through one of those Groupon deals or something, you know? And I was like instantly hooked. And that reignited my passion for lifting. And I think it's funny because a lot of people don't consider CrossFit something that that does that, but it's a feeder sport, definitely, because if you look at people who do CrossFit and are athletes, if they don't compete in CrossFit, they either go into powerlifting or they go into weightlifting, you know, like Olympic weightlifting. And after 2 years of CrossFit, man, where I was the strongest guy in the gym, at competitions, like competition team, I was on the team always, and I would contribute, and I was super competitive as always. Like, I want to be on the top of that board for everything. And like, I finally decided in 2013 that like, this is not where I'm going to be the most competitive, and I want to continue to compete, because when you graduate from college and you have this big hole where you're not playing anymore. So I started powerlifting in 2013, and my first meet, you know, 100% natural, I pulled 600 on a deadlift, and I didn't even know how to deadlift yet.
Yeah.
So I probably didn't learn how to deadlift until I got into like about 640. And then that's what helped me get to 700 eventually in competition.
So what's your biggest pull?
My biggest pull is 700 in competition. Yeah.
In competition.
That was 2015. I never pulled or squatted more than I did in competition. And to me, that says that I'm smart. I train smart, because a lot of people are always like, if you see that, especially on accounts, it's like best gym lift, 450 bench, best competition lift, 375 bench. Like,
it shouldn't be that big of a discrepancy, but no, it should actually be like the comp is where the performance is. I never competed in any type of powerlifting. I mean, I've put up some what I considered impressive numbers in the gym, but you just trumped me. So
well, you look like you could pull, man. How much did you pull?
I pulled 600 downtown,
awesome,
at Downtown Powerhouse. I was in this kind of more, I mean, I was probably maybe 8 to 10 weeks out from a show though too. So
wow.
I was always focused on the muscle stuff. You know, that was my route. It's like, which I think is just, like, that's another thing I want to kind of get into, because, you know, you have the look, you're strong, but you function as well. Like you are.
That's always been at the front for me. Even I've always wanted to look good. I always tell people that. And someone asked me, like, did you get into bodybuilding? And even though, like, when I was a little kid, and that's my introduction to it, was bodybuilding magazines and seeing, like, my guy from my after school care who would take care of me, who was a bodybuilder, like, and I wanted to be like him. When it got to high school, like, and I was lifting in high school and stuff, it was always about performance. And like, back then I was always like, even in after grad school, after all of that, I was like, I'll never be a bodybuilder, because I don't want to get up on stage and show myself off like that. And then that's only because I didn't realize how valuable of a tool bodybuilding could be to make you a better person. And the person who taught me that was Robert Sykes, Keto Savage, because he was like, listen, bodybuilding is one of the best ways to develop yourself mentally, because it's all voluntary. Like, you're like, I don't have to do this. And then you wake up tomorrow again and it's like, I don't have to do this. I'm the one who's putting myself through this. I'm not going to get paid anything, you know? So I appreciate it for that reason. And then nowadays,
structure. I mean, I think that's an element of it too. You know, like there's, I think that's a gap in a lot of people. I mean, just a previous episode that I recorded was The Lost Art of Discipline, with a great friend of mine who's an author, has a book called exactly that, The Lost Art of Discipline. And it's just like, not like, I think it's so easy in today's world to not have structure. So I think, I know for me, I mean, the 10-year career that I had in, I say career, you know, whatever, but, you know, tenure as a competitive bodybuilder, one of the greatest things that came out of it for me was definitely the ability to put structure into place and like you said, voluntarily, like, follow through and execute upon it. Because I mean, it's nobody's forcing you to do it. You seek pain and struggle, and it's something a lot of people don't ever get. Like, they don't get anything that's really, really tough.
Life is really easy nowadays.
Perspective. It can be. I mean, almost too easy. So
I agree with that 100%, man.
So I love that. I mean, so you keeping the, you know, having to want to have the look, but keeping an element of, you know, performance and, you know, mobility. Was
functional strength. I would always be like, man, this doesn't make sense to me to try to put my body together the way body part splits do. Like, obviously I've changed with that, but like, you know, I was always like, well, what about the tie? Like, what about all what about my rotator cuff? What about, you know, all these things that move, and it's not like just a bicep contraction, you know, like, and so I was always focused on that. And I was always also focusing on, like, the things that people neglect, like my back, my hamstrings, my glutes, you know, like the things that I know are going to make me jump higher and sprint faster and all that stuff. So I think that is very helpful for sure, because, like, even nowadays, like, I feel like I can get on some of these more technically advanced or technically harder things, or things that may, like, Ben can put me on something that is really going to crush most people, and it'll probably still crush me, but I'll probably take to it a little bit quicker because of that, just what I taught myself, like with my body awareness and all that stuff throughout all those years, because just moving like an athlete, you know?
No, amazing. So you're doing CrossFit, and then you're getting into powerlifting to continue to, you know, kind of feed that competitive drive. I want to, you know, maybe kind of start getting a little bit of what you're eating, kind of in there, because I think, that's going to lead us to, the ultimate kind of point that I want to get to here with what you got going on now, and how that's, leading a certain way. But so at that time, as you're, pulling 700 pounds, like an animal, what's your nutrition like?
So I was like in grad school, I was already low carb. Okay. So I really, really loved John Berardi back in the day, like Precision Nutrition. I just love what he was writing about, man. It looked like this is a guy he himself is pretty jacked, he's a doctor, he's a PhD, he's smart, he's talking about all these things. And then, I was eating low carb back then, and then obviously started a paleo diet when I started CrossFit, because that was like hand in hand. Everybody's paleo.
It's like you walk in, you sign up, and they hand you a card. It's like, you are now paleo. Like, yes. That's at least what it was back then. I mean, I remember those. I mean, I did a little bit of it back in that 2011, 2012. And it was definitely like, as it was going like this, it's like the diet was meeting it like at the
Yeah. So, I mean, it wasn't low carb. Maybe it was a little bit lower. Yeah, it was low carb. It was for sure low carb, because I wasn't crushing carbs like that. And then my first 3 months of powerlifting, I just let the wheels fall off. I'm like, I'm a powerlifter now. And I just ate, and I was doing drive-through. I was doing fast food. And then the owner of my old CrossFit gym commented on a video that Maura posted where I had my shirt off and I wasn't looking good. And he's like, man, he called me out. He's like, man, what are you doing? And I was like, crap. I was like, he's right. Like, it looks like I got some boobies on me. Like, I'm just not. And so I cleaned it up, but I was still doing carb cycling. So I did more of like a Renaissance periodization type of deal, like where I would like carb cycling. So I probably have like 400 carbs on my training days and maybe like 200 or sometimes 100 carbs on off days. So maybe 1 or 2 days a week that was low carb.
Are you dropping calories on those same days as well, or would you kind of like
those calories were dropped for sure. I didn't adjust fat up or anything like that. And then I did that for 3 years. Yeah, 3 years, because in 2016 was when I finally I pulled out of my last meet that I was prepping for in March, and I had torn a meniscus and I had some other stuff with that knee going on. And then my friend Tucker, who was a bodybuilder and a powerlifter, he put me on a diet. And I said, like, I want you to give me like a meal plan. I want to get leaner. I want to just feel better. I want to get healthier. And then at the end of that month is that story that I always tell people, like I was really lean and I was really miserable. And finally, my friend Trevor, who had been talking to me about this like over and over for months, like, you should try keto, back in Powerhouse downtown. Like, he'd always, that morning crew in the morning, he'd come and tell me, and he'd be like, just look at this, look at these keto pancakes. You telling me you can't eat this? Like, stuff like that. And I'm like, finally, I gave in, man. And like, that was the game changer. June 12th, 2016. That's when I decided to start a ketogenic diet. And then like within 3 days, I felt amazing. Like cause I had already had my carbs really low, probably under 100. And then my fat was at 50 at the time, which was miserable.
Yeah.
And, yeah. And then I think I bumped it up to like from the beginning, it was already up to like 275 or something crazy, 300 grams of fat.
So explain that. I know what you mean, because I've gone through, like, I've been shredded. I've been, sub 4% body fat, just, peeled to the bone. Like, everything is popping, but you feel like garbage. So it's not always about, the look, and that's definitely not at the top of my, mind right now. But, people are going to say, Danny, like, you're hitting all these records. Like, you looked incredible, and you're talking about functioning performance as well. But now you say you get introduced to keto and you feel amazing. So what was the difference? Like, what were just maybe the first few things that you really, really noticed when you made that transition?
I think the two ones that I always bring up first, because how important they are to me and how little control I had over them, are inflammation, like overall, like aches and pains. So like, bro, I would wake up in the morning and it would be like, it would take me like an hour to just warm up a little bit. I always had to be diligent with my ART and massage therapy and thinking of all these. I should take BPC 157, like these peptides. I was taking those peptides because I had knee stuff and all this stuff to try to get healthy. And so that's one that I noticed right away. Like inflammation went down.
What's crazy, not to cut you off, but like a lot of that stuff, it's like people, they walk around like it's a good thing. I can remember I've had, bi-weekly ART, appointments where I was having to see somebody twice, well, not bi-weekly, twice a week. So I would go see twice a week. I would go see somebody twice a week to work on me.
Times a month, that adds up.
Yeah, it does. And it's almost like that badge of honor. It's like, oh yeah, like I got my second appointment for the week. So, but now that I'm out of it, I'm realizing like, I was spending way more money on therapies and treatments than I probably ever needed to, but you can feel amazing with that. Like you should just be able to naturally do it. So yeah, no, I definitely, I get that for sure.
Yeah. And you just automatically assume that since you train hard that you should be
injured all the time.
And things like that. And like, I had everything, man. I had to wear sleeves on my elbows because like if I bench too close to my squat day, my elbows would be crushing me, like just a bunch of stuff, man. And like that all went away. And I was like, I feel 10 years younger. Like I feel right now like a ballerina. Like I feel so light on my feet. I feel so good. And then the second one, which was even more important, was like my appetite, man. Like my appetite was always uncontrollable. I would always try to like portion things out perfectly. We would go to like the parks, like when Desmond was a kid, and we'd go to Disney and stuff. And I would pack 3 sandwiches on gluten-free bread, with full of turkey and cheese and then like some snacks. And I would say, okay, I'm going to eat this one at 10 and this one at 12 and this one at 2. Well, I would eat one, like when we're getting on the monorail, like at 9:30, and then like another one, like at 10:30, and then like maybe like another one at 12. And then at 2 p.m. I'm starving and we need to get something else. Mm-hmm. So it was just uncontrollable hunger. And it was this, imagine years and years, probably at that point, 10 to 15 years of eating past satiety so many times to try to get bigger and gain size that I for sure screwed up those hunger signals, And like the first time when I was like, I could just not eat anything during the day and eat in the afternoon or something like that, to me was like, whoa, that alone, for me, I was like talking to all my powerlifting friends. I was like, listen, maybe don't do it all the time, but after the season, after you compete, after a meet, maybe do a short period to reset those hunger levels, get that inflammation down. And then the last one, which I always talk about, is energy and productivity, man. That one, I would park further away always to walk more because I had to walk more. I would take the stairs. I started running. I did my first half marathon in 2017. Like after years, like the first time I ran, I was like scared and nervous because my meniscus still kind of bothered me. And I started it as a walk. And then like, I remember, man, like I started jogging and I'm like, look at me, I'm jogging, man. It doesn't hurt. And like, it was so amazing, man. And then the productivity, I was still a medical device rep. I was, I remember this, I tell this story a lot. Like it was 2:00 in the afternoon. I was in Sarasota at the time and I was leaving a hospital and I was walking down the parking garage to go into an office, the doctor's office. And I was like, wow, I feel amazing. Like I don't need a coffee. I feel good. And that led to all those times for the rest of that year, which was the second half of 2016. There was a lot of changes going on, but the fact that every single time that 4:00 decision that came, like, should I make another call? Should I make another call or two? Every single time I made it, and so it was like that increase in like say 10 to 15%. Then I won President's Club for the first time in my life. Like I had won Rookie of the Year at 2 places, but I had never gotten President's Club. And that's the top 7% in the country. It was like 15 people out of 200 something and only 2 managers. And my manager was one of the 2 managers in the whole country.
Wow.
So like, I was just like, that's where that whole keto made me a superhuman thing came, because I was just like, wow, man. And like when your brain works better, you become more creative. You become more aware of opportunities. You become just clearer, you know? And so for that reason, like I got involved pretty quick, like within 2 months of starting a ketogenic diet. Like I had read 41 published papers. I had read 3 books on it. You know, I started off as a guest, the first guest on the Ketogenic Athlete podcast. And then I became the co-host after that. Like after the interview.
After one show.
Yeah. He's like, I want you to be my co-host. I was like, all right, let me talk to my wife. And I talked to Maura, and then the rest was history, man. It was crazy.
Yeah. Just going all in. And just to circle back real quick, like you would be the most jacked ballerina of all time. It'd be like that movie. I think it's The Rock. Yeah. Where he's like the father of like the little girl, and like he has to like go be like a ballerina.
Oh, I've heard about this. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it yet. Yeah.
You would definitely be, but I get it, man. Like I get the feeling of like being light on your feet. You know, like in kind of my carnivore journey, it's like, I'm back on the basketball court doing things, jumping, like dunking and touching the rim and like running. I was telling you this past weekend, like, I'm back running, want to do a 5K, which is not a half marathon, but it's an accomplishment for me because
you're going to do it to win it though.
Yeah. We're going in to win. I mean, I'd gotten to the level with my size and, my knees and tendonitis. It's like, I couldn't handle the pounding. So I get that. And I 100%, like, it makes so much sense to me. Now, when you switched from the first time, you were still in your powerlifting, days, correct? Like when you went keto?
Yeah, but well, I had pulled out of that meet in March, and then like March to June was when I did that diet, and then like in June it was like, what do I do now? Like I was trying to figure that out. I was like, I'll train, and I ended up training like a power builder, I guess you could say, like for the next year and a half, like where I even created a program, a power building program. And like, it was basically, I was still doing like maybe 4 days a week. And it would start off with like an overhead press, a bench, a squat, or a deadlift. And then I would do volume stuff, like where I would throw in like back and stuff on my deadlift day. And then I would throw in leg on my squat day, and chest and shoulders on my chest day, maybe some extra tricep stuff on my overhead press day. But I was already kind of over competing in powerlifting, and I lost that desire to compete in powerlifting, and I still haven't gotten it back. I keep saying to myself, like, maybe one day. I got my singlets. I still got my singlets, but I'm just not, like, maybe when I turn 40, maybe I'll say, well, let me turn 40. I'll compete in a master's competition and hopefully do well. But I just wasn't in it anymore, man. Yeah. I did eventually want to train for this 666 challenge that my friend Tony had done, where you basically squat 600, deadlift 600, and run a 6-minute mile in the same day.
Wow. And
I was getting there. Like my runs were already like 540. I had hit a 548 mile. Yeah. My deadlift, I was still above 600, but the problem was, like, every time I would go, I did one workout, I remember, where I was doing sets of 3 at 515, and it took me several days to even feel like no pain. Like the pain was still there. And so I had to abandon that. And then I was like, what do I have to prove, man? Like, you don't have to do this. Like, there's no reason. You don't always have to prove something.
Are you familiar with Smolov, like the Smolov training program?
Oh yeah. Dude, I couldn't do that, man. It's too much.
So I was on this quest. This is back late 2014, 2015, like very early in my time being down at Downtown Powerhouse. But I was on this quest. I'd hit in the 500, like in the gym, like I was clean. I was on it. I didn't have a show really kind of mapped out that I was going to be competing. And I was like, I'm going to get to 600. And I'm like, but I'm going to do it the fastest way possible. And I'm doing all the research, and it's like, okay, like, here's this program. Guys are adding 100 pounds of squat. I'm like, I can do it. So I got 7 weeks. Cause it's split. So it's a 7-week protocol. And then there's kind of a deload week. And then the second half, it's like even more intense. When the first 7 weeks, I'd shot out both of my knees. I'd actually popped blood vessels. in my eyes from like,
because it's high volume and it's heavy.
Oh, it's
like
4 days. It's 4 days a week of just crazy, crazy volume. I mean, I was like squatting 70, 80,000 pounds of volume a week. Like it was just these insane numbers. Like you were squatting Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. Like, so the back-to-back Friday, Saturday, like those workouts were like 3 hours because I'd have to squat, lay down, recover, like eat. Like it was insane. So yeah, I went from 500 to 565 in like the 7 weeks. But my body said, Frank, you can't do it anymore. And it basically like shut it down for me. So that's kind of my squat story.
Yeah, dude. Smolov was one. There was another Eastern Bloc similar.
Yeah.
That was also, it wasn't Smolov, but it was another one that was also super high volume, super high, heavy and high volume.
Yeah. Insane. And I was keeping up a full upper body split. So I was training, you know, a lot of times I would train 4 or 5 days a week of upper body. So I'm like doing these like 9 workouts, just way overtrained. But yeah, it was just insane and crazy. So now one thing that, I mean, you kind of touched a little bit like more of a power building back in those days, but I know, you know, kind of fast forwarding to, you know, more recent stuff that you got going on. I mean, it's only been very recently, maybe in the last year and a half, I think that, you know, real hypertrophy or, you know, muscle building was a part of your regimen. And here's where like, I kind of want to get into because, you know, for me, it's like, I have that background. Like I built muscle for myself. I trained tons of clients, you know, I still have clients that I coach, but it's like, we took those, you know, let's call them traditional routes to getting there, you know, like it was like you know, a big fan of intra-workout carbs. I know that's, you know, maybe something that you're still doing. I'm not too sure how it works.
Oh, I'll explain that later if you want.
But, you know, yeah, we were more of the standard kind of, you know, bodybuilding approach, like your 6 meals a day, you're cycling carbs, you know, you're loading things in and around your workout, your peri-workout nutrition was a big deal. High volume, you know, workouts, high density workouts, like a mix of all of these to kind of get to the accomplished goal. But now like you have things that you're doing, you've, you know, uncovered, I think, a lot with your journey and, you know, your partnership with Ben. So kind of tell us you know, what got you into, you know, maybe wanting to focus on the hypertrophy stuff, because it wasn't in your background. And what is this ketogenic muscle building intelligence or keto muscle intelligence? What is it all about?
Oh, dude. So last year or 2017 was when Ben first reached out to me, like in fall of 2017. And then I met him in like March of 2018, I think, for the first time. And like, then he started to invite me to come work out at his gym at MI40. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the first times I went when he invited me, you were there.
I saw you. Yeah.
And Ben wasn't there that whole week, you know, like, and he's like, hey, I'll come for a week, man. Just come. I'll be in the office. You'll come meet me, whatever. I didn't even see him. He wasn't even there that week. And so I was like, I love your gym, man. It's great, whatever. And then he just out of nowhere starts saying, like, he starts texting me like, hey, come to the gym. We're going to train legs tomorrow or something. And I couldn't that day because I had something going. And then the next time he asked me, I'm like, look, I'm not going to say no again to him. Mm-hmm. And we just started training together. And the first time we trained, he had me do deadlifts at 500 with 5-second negatives. And it was the most brutal thing that I'd ever done in my life. Like, I always just let the weight drop, you know? Mm. And then he started to teach me where we would do things that were way lighter than what I used to, but he would kind of show me how to do it from the beginning to end. Like, you know, the whole spiel, yep. You know, all of it, like how to get a good contraction at the lengthened position, at the shortened position, and how to initiate the movement, how to stabilize properly, all that.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's no secret to anybody that's, you know, listened or read anything. Like, Ben has had a massive influence on, you know, me as a coach and as a mentor. And I mean, you know, like, he's been one of the greatest influences for me when it comes to muscle building. So yeah, like anybody that's ever followed anything that I said, like there's an influence of, you know, of BPAC in all that stuff.
Yeah, man. He's just really smart with it, and he's a good coach. And then I was like, this is really cool, you know, because I feel better doing this. Hold on a second. Sorry, I got a call, and I should have this on Do Not Disturb. Sorry about that.
Yeah, Chris will clean it up.
Yeah.
Chris, cut this part out.
Let me make sure I turn this off just so we don't get any more, because the screen, that's the problem. Okay. Wait, let me go to notifications. Why doesn't it let me? Whatever. Anyways, so what I liked about this style, man, is that this style didn't hurt as much as before. You know, like I could train lighter,
Mm-hmm.
and I could feel the muscles more, but it wasn't as heavy as it used to be. And, you know, of course, last summer, it was just a perfect storm because Derek shows up. He wants to start training with Ben. He wants to get ready for the Olympia. And it just worked out that it was me, Derek, and Ben as training partners. And that summer, I mean, I got big. I got bigger, you know, like I added muscle. And I wasn't even like, I remember like about a month into the consistently training, I was like, I'm getting bigger. Like I'm putting on muscle, and I'm like, I'm not even trying. And so then I was like, well, maybe I should try, you know, like maybe I should try since I'm already getting gains out of this. And then that's when I first started to play around a little bit with carbs, man. If you asked me back in the day, I would have said, no way. Like, you know, but
yeah. So wait, so just,
yeah,
to kind of circle back real quick. So at this time, we're talking about you training partner with Ben Pakulski. People listening are probably familiar with him. And then also Derek Lunsford, who, you know, was he was getting ready for the Mr. Olympia and ended up placing second in the 212. So you're training with these guys and you're building muscle, but you are on at the time, full carnivore diet. Completely?
Yeah, I was carnivore for sure. Like last year, I started carnivore in August of 2017. I did a month of, it was just salmon and anything that came from a cow. So like any type of beef product, and I felt freaking fantastic. And but when I was training with them, like I would hit a wall sometimes, especially when it got into the summer. I would cramp more. Like there would be times when my muscles were just like shaking and stuff. Like it was probably a little bit of dehydration, a little bit of electrolyte issues, just stuff that I still hadn't figured out. And so what I started to do, like about a month into it, was I would consume a post-workout meal with 50 carbs in it. And I thought, that's all I'm going to do, guys. That's all I got, you know, like, and Ben was like, okay, whatever. Like, you know, Ben would eat, like when he would carb up, he would eat like 200 carbs, which, you know, if you're going to carb up, you might as well carb up. Mm-hmm. Like 50 carbs for me, what it did was it basically, it did fill me out a little bit, but then the rest of the afternoon and night, I was really, really craving carbs. And so the easy fix for that, which I did this year when I started doing actual carb ups, is like, if I do a carb up, I do in the morning, you know, very little carbs, pre-workout, super starch, which is a real cool resistant starch that is basically very keto friendly. It burns like a fat. It doesn't cause insulin to rise. It keeps your blood sugar stable. But on my carb up day, I would add like a tablespoon of honey to that. And then post workout, I would get like 100 to 120 carbs. But then the key was that extra 2 meals later in the day, each one had another 30 to 40 carbs. And that was so much better. And my blood sugar was stable. I woke up in ketosis every single time. So all that to say, like, I got into the keto muscle building. I got into building muscle because it was fun, you know, like it was a different thing. It was a new thing to learn. And of course, like Ben and I are having conversations while we're training all the time. And we're talking about, like, you know, what does this need to look like? We need to make this into a program. What are the things that we're doing? And some of these things we stumbled upon, like Derek at first, we did rest quite a bit. Like the rest periods were like maybe 2 to 3 minutes. And those did very well for us. Like we did very well with those. And then later on towards the end, like I would say the last 6 weeks of Derek's prep, like Ben would have him add like some drop sets and some other sets. And I wouldn't even do those, but I would hit a wall. And we finally made this program, man, because like everybody asks, how can you build muscle on keto? And no one asks how. And no one has ever asked me how. And I was at the time already getting kind of sick of this whole thing, like where people say, can you build muscle on keto? Yeah, you can. Look, Danny Vega, Robert Sykes, and you name a few, but that's not really saying how to do it. Or, you know, even if we build muscle on keto, that doesn't mean that it's possible, because maybe we're outliers, you know? So what we did was we sat down and, man, there would be times like, because I would go to dinner at Ben's, you know, the families would be there, and there would be times when the kids are playing, everybody's like, you know, just socializing, and Ben and I are like sitting on the couch, you know, going back and forth, and I'm typing something and I'm showing him. So I wrote most of the keto document, like the keto kickstart document, and Ben contributed to that. Ben wrote the workouts. I wrote the cardio fat adaptation program, and then we both came up with all this ongoing content that we're doing. And man, people are crushing it. People are doing really, really well, because when you eat a ketogenic diet, you do have to be aware of the limitations, and you got to be aware of the things that you need to consider. Because if not, whether you're trying to build muscle or burn fat, if you're training the wrong way and you're eating a ketogenic diet, you could literally be sabotaging yourself with your training.
Yeah, so I want to make sure that we get them access, and we can show them where to find that, because we could talk probably for the next 10 hours and actually break the program down. And I know it'd be so much value in that, but we'll point them to where to go for that. But I think if maybe at this time, like, we could actually provide some real actionable steps. Somebody's out there now, they're hearing this, they're like, okay, Danny, I got it. Like, it is possible. You've shown it. You guys have put it all together. Where do people want to? Let's identify the avatar, the person that we're maybe trying to talk to now. So here's a guy. He's mid-30s, maybe in his 40s. So he's like later on into his life. He's got a background. So he was an athlete like yourself. So he's played sports. Maybe a gym rat, maybe did some competitive stuff like in his 20s, and now his life is, it's a lot different. Careers are taking over. You're working 50, 60 hours a week. You got a wife, you got a family, you have all these other obligations. So, this guy knows, like, I can't commit to the 5 or 6 day a week competitive bodybuilding. And Danny, you're telling me that this fasting thing with the carnivore and the keto, but a little bit of carbs, like, so where does he want to start? Like, what does he want to do from a nutritional side of things? Like we don't have to go super, super deep in advance, but what are some kind of key first steps that a guy wants to take? And then if he was looking to make sure that the training is complemented with the nutrition in the right way, so he's not hitting that wall and he's not just, pushing himself and running himself into the ground. So where would you want to start from the nutrition side of things? Should it be only meat for a little while, or do you start right with some supplementing carbs, and then how do you make sure that the training matches the nutrition?
Well, first with the nutrition side, whether you are, oh man, I was going to forget. Oh, totally forgot. But so basically it doesn't matter where you want to end up. The bottom line is, for me, like, I think no matter what, people have asked me in the past, like, oh, should I do keto first before I do carnivore? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. Look, I had a year and 2 months of keto before I went carnivore, and it was a beautiful thing. Like, I loved it. But man, when I started eating like just meat, I was like, wow, I told people the difference in cravings even between keto and carnivore is greater to me than the difference between the standard American diet and keto. So like, I had the best control over. So I think carnivore is the place to start, because especially if you're that guy, like, you probably have some aches and pains, some bumps and bruises. And there's nothing better at simplifying it than saying, just eat meat. Because what about this? Is this keto? Is that keto? Can I eat this? What about net carbs? What about, total carbs? All this other stuff. And I'm like, just eat meat, like, you don't, and everybody, I always tell them, like, don't track, especially like in the first month or two. Even if you're trying to lose weight, don't even track, because you're just going to eat the right food. You might lose some fat, but then eventually, if you're trying to get to a certain body weight or certain.
Now, I know you're not going to track, but do you want to pay attention to a certain degree of your protein fat ratio? I mean, you don't want to go eat, all lean, you know, like 98% lean beef or, you know, 95% lean beef, like you definitely want to be able to pay attention a little bit to the protein, fat.
Yeah. So if you're that guy, you're probably like us. So he's probably a little bit neurotic, like both of us. So he's probably going to want to know, like, where should I start? So I would say, like, at least 1 times your lean body mass for muscle or for protein, and then even body weight. So like if you're a 200-pound male and you have 10% body fat, at least 180 grams of protein, because that's your lean mass, and maybe even 200. And then like at the beginning, it is, especially since we're talking to a beginner, I always say, like, it's important to keep the fat high, especially in the beginning, because 2 reasons. Number one, you're going to have carb withdrawals. You're going to, your appetite and all that. So you want to have adequate fat to help you with satiety. But number 2, because fat is now this fuel that you're using to turn into ketones in your liver, that you're also at the same time hemorrhaging at the same time, because you're peeing them out, because your body's producing them, but you're not really using them. So I figure, like, I always tell people, like, if you keep that fat high at first, and a simple rule of thumb is set your fat at least equal to protein, all the way up to double your protein, depending on your caloric needs. So if you are about equal with protein, then your fat's going to be right around 65%. That's like more or less. And then if you're about double protein, then your fat's going to be right around 80%. And so if you're a lot of these people who are they're just trying to heal themselves, but that's not our guy. Our guy is this guy right here. So this guy, I would say, maybe just cut it in the middle. So protein, 1 times your lean body mass or body weight. Fat, just multiply that number times 1.5. Carbs, don't even worry about, because don't worry. Like there may be some carbs in eggs, there may be some carbs in liver, but you never have to worry about counting your carbs. Super, super important is electrolytes at first. Everybody knows, like, at first, that keto flu, part of the reason why is, like, when insulin drops, your kidneys start, you know, signaling your body to excrete these fluids. And of course, with that comes massive amounts of potassium, sodium, and magnesium. So I always say, for me, I aim personally for like 8 to 10 grams of sodium a day. But I would tell other people, like, at least 5 grams of sodium. And then you want to try to get at least half of that in potassium. Potassium sources like leafy greens, Swiss chard, avocados, not bananas. You know, bananas, everybody's like,
so it's okay for a carnivore to eat these foods?
Oh yeah. So here's this hilarious thing that happened last year. So last year, part of how I was getting extra carbs in was I was adding avocados. And I don't know if you remember this or saw this, but like, I started getting all these questions like, "You're not carnivore anymore?" And I was like, holy crap, I didn't know this is the avocado controversy of 2018. You know, like I made this meme because I was sick of being asked about it. And so I put like this picture of like an avocado with a big plate of meat. and I put like definition, like Avocado Controversy. And then I put like 3 different definitions of like what that is. And then at the bottom is like number 3, I do what I want, you know, like, don't tell me what I should eat or shouldn't eat. I personally think, like, of the 3 electrolytes that are impacted by like following a ketogenic or carnivore diet, to me, may be different for other people, but to me, sodium and magnesium play a much greater role in like messing with me. So like if my sodium's low, I'll feel like crap. If my magnesium, if I'm not supplementing 400 to 500 milligrams of magnesium glycinate every single day, I will start cramping within 2 days, which is crazy. Potassium, I don't have any potassium sources other than my liver nowadays. Like, liver has a good amount of potassium. Meat doesn't have a ton of potassium. And then my adaptogens, I take this Neuro Super Cream, which is basically coconut cream with the adaptogens, like 5 adaptogens, and it has 1,800 milligrams of potassium. Even when I was at my strictest of carnivore, I always had fat in my coffee, and that fat would sometimes not be animal sourced. So another thing that caused a controversy was when I did the first carnivore keto cut, where I was like, what is carnivore keto? This is how I see it. This is how I view carnivore keto. This is my definition. And I made this cute little pyramid, and at the top of the pyramid was non-animal oil. So I included avocado oil, olive oil, and all this stuff. And people were like, that's not carnivore. And I'm like, I don't care. Like I know that like there's like salicylates in coconut oil that could cause like autoimmune issues. Well, if that happens to you, then don't
stay away from them.
Coconut oil. But like I personally, like I've always had like some fat in my coffee. Like it's a little bit different now because like I do have black coffee now and then, but I still use my coffee as a vehicle to get supplements in. So I'll get my adaptogens in. I'll put my L-theanine in, and sometimes collagen. So from a nutritional standpoint, I think we got it pretty covered.
Well, I think,
yeah, go ahead.
No, I had maybe one more question just to kind of wrap up nutrition. So, I know for me, it's, carnivore came at a different time than a lot of people, for me, and what it served and how it's, contributed to, to my life. But, big benefit that you touched on was like, the satiety and not being hungry all the time. So for me, it's been massively beneficial to only have to eat once, maybe twice a day.
That's me now too.
So from a muscle building perspective though, guys are going to say, well, I got to eat more than just twice a day or once a day. Like if I need to build muscle, can we still get away with fasting and only eating in a short window if we want to put muscle on?
Yeah. So if you're someone who's trying to actively put on muscle, one meal a day is not going to be enough. But what thing you could do is start with like a minimum effective dose. So you want like those little kind of boluses of protein to keep protein synthesis going, I spoke about this recently with Ben, I think, how like absorption is not the issue. Like everybody's like, you're not going to absorb that much protein. Yes, you are. Yes, you will absorb it. Like you can eat 150 grams of protein in a sitting, your body will absorb it. The problem is that for muscle protein synthesis to be like optimal, you should space it out a little bit more. So my opinion would be that like, if you want to do OMAD, the first step would be add, like, let's say you trained either at lunchtime or at breakfast. I would definitely recommend to do like a whey protein concentrate after your training, just to have like some protein on board. And then you can eat your protein in the afternoon. And then if that wasn't enough, then I would say, go to 2 meals a day. And then if that wasn't enough, then I would say, you know what, do this. Do most days, maybe like you have like a 10 to 12 hour window. So like maybe you're eating from, 8 in the morning to 8 at night, or 10 in the morning to 8 at night. But then like on your off days, do OMAD or do a longer fast. You don't have to fast every day to get the benefits. Like you and I, we love it, but guys who are trying to put on muscle, like they are already in a deficit of growth stuff.
Yeah.
So to be in this, like life is all about, and I'm thinking about this a lot lately, like this interplay between catabolic and anabolic, cardio and lifting, seasonal eatings, eating more carbs in the summer. Like for me, not only does it make sense, but like in practice, what I see is every time I switch things up, my body eats it up. My body loves it. Mm-hmm. So like I did these carbs, where I would do a carb up every single week religiously for like 2 months. And I did, I was a little bit more lazy with carnivore. Like I was eating things that weren't just meat. And then I was like, okay, that served its purpose. And now for like the month and a half, at the very least, I already told myself like the rest of August and September, I won't carb up unless I feel like I need it, which would be cool because I will actually be relying on my intuition and like how I feel.
Well, you have to have physical awareness. Like you have to kind of like be able to listen to your body. And I think in order to get there, I think the carnivore is a great place to get to where you can actually understand like how things are supposed to feel. Because, I know for a lot of people, like following a traditional, Western diet, it's just like a lifetime of doing that. Like you have no clue what something is supposed
and then you're eating every 3 hours. because like you're always trying to beat your hunger. You're always trying to like eat a little bit. So you don't want to get hungry because I know how bad it is. You know how it is? Yeah, it's just so much background noise, you know? So, yeah, did we cover everything on diet?
Yeah, on the nutrition side, yeah. So we're not gonna really build a lot of muscle for only eating once a day. So we want to space it out 2-3 times, maybe get the whey protein shake in there. It's okay, like like don't get attached to being a carnivore only. Like seek out the avocados or some of the other stuff to help supplement if you're truly trying to push the performance side. And I think that's something that you're really big on. It's like I'm not attached to the title or to to what it is. It's like I'm going to do what I think is going to be most optimal, and I'm going to test it, and then I'm going to put my results out there.
Yeah, man. Like I think like I get carnivore and keto fatigue all the time. Like because I get fatigued with dealing with the people, because it's like, I have to work hard now that I have a decent sized platform to kind of tease apart all these things.
Yeah.
Because I'm always trying to get people to think. And it's like, I'm not telling you that you need to do this. I'm not telling you that you need to do that. I'm saying that if this happens, maybe think about this. And if that happens, maybe think about that.
Yeah.
Like, that's all I'm saying. And I'm like, did I not say that? Let me go look at the video again. Yes, yeah. I did.
Here's the challenge. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too deep, but it's like when you tell somebody, okay, now go think about that. It's like that key word. It's like, wait, I have to think. Like, no, everybody just wants to be told what to do. And it's like, no, it's like
black and white. I want yes or no.
Yeah. It's like, no, it's your body. Like, it's like, you're the only one with that specific body. Like, here's the tools. Here's what other people are doing. Now assimilate all that information, get as much as you possibly can, and test it out on your own. And I think that's what I'm trying to do here. It's like, okay, here's what's working for you. Here's what you've done. So we got the nutrition stuff covered. Training wise, I've talked a lot about training, in the last few years. I have programs out there. I mean, we talked about it a little bit before, kind of, some of my influences and models. And, I know that, what I've done to ultimately build the physique that I had and kind of some of the methods, like it wouldn't be ideal for this type of diet. So what are we looking from a training side of things with this same guy in mind? And then, kind of like where should he look at putting his effort from the training side of things?
Yeah, that's really important, man. So first of all, like I will say, like there are genetic factors that play into this. So like some people may be able to get away with more high volume stuff a little bit more because there's certain genetic aspects of it. Like I'm always reminded of my friend Robert, because my friend Robert has Anthony J read our genes, our DNA on his podcast. Like we were in Arkansas, we were pig hunting and fishing and all that, and we did a podcast episode where we read our DNA, and Robert had like this gene that was associated with, it was slow twitch dominant. It was, he could handle a lot of cardiovascular. He ran a marathon without preparing, and he was almost at his heaviest. He was like right around 190 pounds, and he did it. Like that would crush me.
Just and signed up and said, I'm gonna go run a marathon. Like,
yeah, within a month. And he didn't, I don't even think he trained. I think he might've gone for a run or two. I don't even know if he did. And so like, I can't do that. But for the most part, there is like, you have to think about it this way, like energy systems 101. You have creatine phosphate, you have your glycogen system, you have oxidative. And like for us to be training in a way that we're staying in this glycolytic system, which is go to bodybuilding.com. That's what people are doing, going to bodybuilding.com, getting a program, 5 sets of 10 or 3 sets of 10, like, 30 total sets and like 45-second rest and high reps, 12, 15 drop sets, all these other things. Like all of those things are very glycolytic. And like I try to explain to people, like I am a big fan of fat as an energy source. I think it's the best energy source there is. It's our preferred energy source for a lot of activities. But like once you get into that realm where you're doing more than like 1 or 2 sets or like 1 or 2 burnout sets, and this is the actual workout that you're doing, and you're basically not resting enough, even if you're fat adapted, which fat adaptation will cause you to basically go way higher percentage of your VO2 max or way higher of your max using fat as energy. Even with that, like if you're not giving yourself adequate rest, what's going to eventually happen is you're going to basically start creating sugar out of tissue, you know, and that's the last thing you want, because what happens, like when we train that way, it's very, very stressful. Cortisol rises. And then typically what you do is you have a post-workout shake that has carbs in it, and you don't feel that because carbs are like an easy fix for a lot of stuff. Like you feel dehydrated, you have some carbs. Even if you're not diligent with electrolytes, you can help kind of rehydrate yourself, because you can hold on to water with carbs. You know, every gram of carbs is like 3 to 4 grams of fluid that you hold on to. And then the other thing is adequate rest periods. So giving yourself that 2 to 3 minute rest period. And then if you do want to tap into that other type of training, like that high volume training, then don't be afraid to do pre-workout carbs. If you really want to be conservative, then you use something like super starch, because super starch is like, it's non-impact. It's basically like, it was created for babies, for children who suffer from glycogen storage disease, who if they hadn't had super starch, every single night that kid is going to sleep, that parent is afraid that their glucose they're going to have a hypoglycemic episode and they're going to die. Like these kids had to be intravenously or fed through the nose every 2 hours, and like just given fluids every 2 hours. And this fixed that for them. So when you start to understand, like in type 1 diabetics, it's a great source for them too. You could do that, or you could do even just a tablespoon of honey. And honey is carnivore friendly because honey is technically not a vegetable. So everybody like talks about honey is part of the animal kingdom.
Okay.
You know? And so like if you want to be carnivore, you can even among the most selective of carnivore judges on the internet, you would still possibly like keep your carnivore card, just adding like some honey pre-workout. And like that,
guys, be on the lookout for muscle building honey, brought to you by David.
yeah, Carnivore Honey
in your local Publix or shopping store near you.
Yeah, baby, man, honey's great, man. And then the thing about honey too, like if you get raw local honey, then you get those benefits, like you get those antibodies. Dude, and my family, we have allergies. Do you have allergies?
Not too bad. My brothers and sisters do, or my brother and sister does. It hasn't really affected me a lot, but talking about local honey. So, Steph and I took a trip up to the mountains in Georgia earlier this year.
Oh yeah.
Brought some back from the not the Rockies, the Appalachian mountains up there. Just like the raw natural, like
so good, man.
So good. So, okay. So we want rest periods, but what type of split are we going bodybuilding style split? Like, are we doing isolation, or is it a compounded movement, or a mix of both? Like, how should we look to structure the workout?
So the way we did it for our program, and I think this is a great way to do it, is it's full body. So every single day there's a little bit of everything. So we hit legs pretty much. There's some sort of leg movement every single day, and it always starts with legs, which is awesome. You always got to start with legs. That's Ben, you know. Like Ben,
exactly.
Every time Ben wants to take people through a workout, I notice he takes them through a leg workout. You ever notice that?
Oh yeah.
Crushes people with legs. So we always start with legs, but like technically speaking, like if you wanted to write your own workout, what you could do is you can still do supersets, but I would do it with like antagonistic muscles or unrelated muscles. So you would do like a bicep and a tricep, or a tricep and a back. And what I like about that is that if you're someone on like a time crunch and you're looking at this and you're like, man, I can't rest 2 to 3 minutes every single time, I got a time crunch. Well, then maybe you can cut the rest to 1 minute, but you do a superset. So like maybe you do your first set, rest a minute, then do your second set, and rest a minute. Yeah. So you're cutting the rest in half, because you're instead of resting 2 minutes after every exercise, you're only resting 2 minutes total. And then if you're doing that with antagonistic muscles, then you're not really taxing yourself. So you're giving that muscle more time to recover, even if you're still kind of keeping your heart rate fast.
Yep.
And then rep ranges, I mean, I would say if you're looking at it from a time of under tension standpoint, maybe like 30 seconds, 35 seconds. We're not talking about a lot. And like, I think what this does is so beautiful, because what it does is not everybody's going to have a chance to go to Hypertrophy Mastery or go to some sort of seminar to watch Ben teach them. But at the very least, you'll have access to, like if you took our program, for instance, like you see all the videos and you'll learn how to do stuff. And then what's cool, I've seen this a lot, is two things happen. Number one, since you rest longer, you focus on the set more. So like every set counts. And number two, since a lot of the time there'll be 6 reps or 8 reps, maybe 8 reps. Sometimes a lot of times it's 6 reps on stuff. Like you're going to put every single effort of your being into all those 6 reps, you know? So you're focusing on quality over quantity. And like someone our age, I think that sounds pretty attractive to them because it's not easy to do. Like I'd rather do what I'm doing now and kicking my butt for 30 to 35 seconds per set than, you know, tooling around for 90 seconds or 75 seconds. And just like, you know, after like I get my set done, you know, making a phone call and, you know, like just not, whereas like now I need those 2 minutes. I need those 3 minutes, you know?
And where 3-4 days a week is adequate frequency?
Yeah. So for the guy we're talking about, 3 to 4 is great. If for a beginner, the beginner program is actually 5 days a week. So it's higher frequency because of that skill part, you know, that they haven't figured out that how to really do this perfectly. So they don't really feel their muscles like the way we do.
Yeah.
So we'll also give them an option to like on your last set, maybe do 1 drop set just to feel it a little bit more. So you do that, not even a NOS set because it's just 1 drop.
Yep.
And so all these things come together. And then of course we educate them on the importance of like, which I'm sure you're doing too, is like managing stress, making sure sleep is good, looking at things like if you do have an Oura ring, looking at your HRV and letting that dictate like how today's going to look. If you're not, you know, if you're feeling like crap, HRV is low, take a rest day. It's okay. You know, and then we also have like kind of other things like if this is happening, increase your protein. If that's happening, try, you know, bring in some carbs, stuff like that. I mean, it's really not complicated, but it takes focus and it takes like people to switch their mindset about training, which you've already done. And Ben has always talked about this, is like, don't go in there to just get it done. Go in there to like contract, get in there to get, it's not about completion. It's about contraction.
Yeah.
You know,
Physical. I mean, going back, we touched on like actually feeling things working, like, you know, you're not attached to the movement of what actually is occurring outside, but what is actually happening on the inside and feeling those movements work. Yeah, man, I can't, you know, I can't say enough about the both of you. You know, I'm not one that's going to talk a lot about and promote other muscle stuff. You know, obviously like that was a big part of my life and I built a business around it, but
your videos were great.
To know you two guys personally and what you're doing. I mean, it's got the Frank Rich stamp of approval, whatever that means to anybody out there.
Awesome.
So I want to make sure people know where to find it. And it's, you know, I have access to it and if I can, you know, share with anybody, but where, if, you know, if they're interested in finding out more about this ketogenic muscle intelligence, is it keto? How do you, what's the name again? I think I've butchered.
Yeah, so it's keto muscle intelligence, but it might be ketogenic muscle intelligence. Okay. I think it's ketogenic muscle intelligence. And man, the URL is kind of clunky, so I'll give it to you.
We'll just link it up. We'll link it up in the notes for everybody.
Like go.muscleintelligence.com/keto-muscle-intelligence or something like that.
Nobody's going to remember that. And exactly. You got to give people a link.
I know, man. I know.
So cool. Yeah, we'll definitely drive them back to that. And then, yeah, I mean, any, you know, just for, you know, sheer respect of time here, I know, like I said, we could go on for days talking, and I do want to have you and Mara back on.
Oh, I'm excited for that.
About some whole different stuff. Here, I thought it was valuable. You know, like I said, I don't think I said it here, but people know that, you know, the mission of the show is to help men break free from the shackles of addiction through the power of faith and fitness. So this one, we took a little bit different approach than what I've done on some of the previous episodes. Wanted to really kind of dig into some of the fitness stuff. So I appreciate you today, and I'm excited to, I'm going to see you on Sunday again. And so yeah, I mean, anything else you kind of want to plug at this point, or, you know, where can people find Danny, and just anything kind of exciting that you want to share before we kind of wrap it up here? I'm going to have one more question I'll ask you at the end.
Well, DannyVega.ms on Instagram. That's where people mostly can find me. And then if they want to listen to our podcast, fatfuel.family. That's also where my coaching is. That's also where our programs are. And other than that, like the only other thing that I'll say is, let me see, what can I say right now? Whenever you have, I want to just tell your audience, whenever you have that idea in your mind about so-and-so that you just thought of them, like send them that text. Or whenever you see that lady that you work with or you see and it looks like maybe she lost some weight, trust me, even if she didn't lose weight, maybe she didn't, but if she looks like it, she's not going to be offended if you tell her, did you lose some weight? Just like I've noticed that there's opportunities that we get like in life where God is kind of telling us like, you know, maybe you should go say that to that person. And then you if you're not paying attention, you're just like, maybe I'll tell them later. And you never do. Like, just do it, you know, just do it. Because like every single time, it's like what I tell the kids, like we read this book to them. We've read it a few times. It's called Have You Filled the Bucket Today? Like when you fill that person's bucket, you fill your own bucket, you know? So that's the only thing other than that I want to share.
Amen. No, 100%. That in itself is powerful. No, it's amazing what something as simple as that. I know I have people in my life that reach out to me in that way, and it's something I've implemented into a part of my day. You know,
yeah, I know you do that every day too. Yeah, you're like you look for someone actively to do that, which I think.
I mean, call it gratitude, call it appreciation, call it love. I mean, it can have any word you want to attach to it, but just pure giving of yourself to another person, it pays them and it pays you back 10 times fold. So
it always does, man. It always does. And like they always feel so good. Like when you reach out to that person, it's like, oh man, I did not expect that. You know, like I woke up yesterday and my friend Lauren made a post on Instagram about me, and it was just talking and like just praising me. And I was like, man, you seriously made my day, you know, like that's amazing, you know, like, and if we could have more people doing that, probably be a lot less pissed off people in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. If people led with more love and more gratitude towards each other, I think everybody would have a lot more happiness in their life. So
yeah, man,
incredible story. Well, one thing we kind of been, trying to wrap up, trying to still figure out what I'm doing as far as hosting a podcast. I still am unsure of it, but I've been asking this question at the end. We let in with it. Keto turned you into a superhuman. So, knowing the mission of the show, knowing, the mission of what I'm all about, and that it is called the superhuman life. How does Danny Vega, how would he define living a superhuman life?
Oh, wow. That's a good one, man. Okay. I would say that like the first thing is like that the implication of superhuman is that like you have supernatural power. So I would say, of course, you need to tap into something bigger than yourself. For us, that's God, and so, when you have that compass to kind of, guide you, you will have power and you will have just this effectiveness and anything beyond anything that you could ever do. Being I want to say, like, as far as a man goes, like you have to be, I tell Desmond this yesterday, like I told him, we were just driving to jiu-jitsu and I was like, there's 3 things that I want you to keep. Always stand up for justice, which he always does. Like when he sees someone treating someone bad, he's like, don't do that. That's wrong. Or he said, someone says a bad word, he'll tell them, don't say that. And, number 2, if people call you, like, keep that sweetness that you have. If people call you sweet, or if people call you nice, that is a beautiful compliment. Don't worry about that, because like for me, when people say that I'm nice, at the same time, they know that they can't mess with me, So, a superhuman life would be a life that's like, has all the right priorities. You have the right guidance from above. If you find, a partner, being a good partner to your partner, being authentic, communicating well. And of course, I mean, you got to keep yourself in shape, like take care of your body, like you got to, I think that would be it. Like money, who cares, man? Like I you know how it is. Like I've made a lot of money, and like I make a third of that now. Like I've said it several times, and I'm still doing just fine. Like I'm much more fulfilled. So I guess that's my long answer to that one.
No, that was not long. That was not long at all. It's spot on, brother. Amen. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing,
My pleasure,
opening
man.
up to the audience. All you guys out there still here listening. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the Superhuman Life. It's been an extreme honor to be here with Danny today, and we hope that you did find value in what we shared today. If you did, make sure to always share this with somebody out there that can benefit from the message of the show, whether they're looking to build muscle, whether they're looking to uncover something deeper within themselves. The show is driven by a mission to ultimately help the world. And we can only do that with incredible guests like Danny, incredible listeners like yourself. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Make sure to leave us a rating and review, and we'll talk to you next week.